what does it take to successfully get through the process of grief? Even the fact that I call it a process, yes, it's a process. And most people feel like grief is a starting point and an ending point. Most people feel that grief is someone died and I must mourn. Most people don't understand or have the tools in which to properly equip themselves to grieve in a meaningful way that actually makes them better than when they began the process of grieving. Grief has such a negative connotation in it. However, grieving is a healing process. It's a process that does not have to hurt. It does not have to make you feel sad, even though sadness is incorporated in the construct of grief. Grief can be the death of someone. It could be the loss of something. It could be the separation of a relationship. Grief can take on many forms, many avenues, many aspects. It can overwhelm our lives and take over every facet of our being. But grief, just like crying, just like sadness, can actually bring upon change, renewal, rejuvenation, similar to the tide that comes into the shore to cleanse the sand and the shoreline. Grief can be healing if you let it be. But that requires some practice and some direction from someone who's been there, someone who understands from a holistic place what you're going through. Being able to grieve around people who have empathy, which is such a rare commodity nowadays, is the greatest gift of love that one can receive in a time of need. I know grief all too well, but I didn't really learn for myself what grief meant until my own mother passed away of ovarian cancer. As a singer, as a performer, I've sang at many funerals. As a child, in a choir, as a young adult, I sang at many celebrities' funerals. It's kind of a random fact about me, but I've been around so many facets of grieving. For example, I've sang at funerals of Black Americans, of white Americans. I've been at funerals of different nationalities and different peoples of color. And culturally, they all grieve different. People who are young grieve different than people who are old. I find that young people, when they grieve, sometimes it seems like there's nothing there. They have a sort of disassociation with death because in an adult's mind, oftentimes it feels very final, especially when you lose someone who is so close to you or is such an intricate part of your everyday life. But when you're young, you don't really know what that means. You're going to miss that person, but what does that really mean to you until you get older and start realizing how precious life is? The naivety of youth is so beautiful because you're just there to enjoy that space, that time, that interaction with that person. And then when they're gone, there are subconscious grieving spaces that take place. For example, when a child grows up without a parent, without a mom or without a dad because that parent is absent or that parent passes away. You're able to function. You're able to find fun. You're able to go to school and eat dinner and hang out with friends and enjoy your life because you don't have a necessary direct tie to the loss of that person. It's usually the partner, the sibling, the parent that has that connection so that when a partner is absent, for example, I wasn't married with my first 3 children. And I was a single mom. I did not have a partner to help me raise my children. So my loss of that partnership was far greater than my children's loss because they didn't have that direct connection with having an active parent in the household. They didn't know what they were missing. They knew subconsciously something was missing, but it wasn't until they got to be grown-ups that they started the grieving process of, damn, I grew up without a father in the household. I grew up without a man to rely upon to give me that masculine energy that I could have learned something from. It wasn't until they were adults that it started connecting the dots between that person still alive, yet doesn't call me on the regular to find out how I'm doing. That's a loss that is so profound especially when that person is still living. But it's no less difficult than a person who's no longer on earth, but yet that you can still talk to in the spiritual realm. It's still lost, but there's a presence that you can't exactly put your finger on. You just know something's missing. So the process of grieving a living parent feels similar to grieving the loss of a person whose body is no longer viable and here on earth. So I say this all to say, when you are grieving, give yourself space and grace and time to conceptualize what that means. Because none of us really understand exactly what that's going to mean because of the unknown factors. Most of us, when we talk about fear or worry, fear is the foreshadowing of worry that will come in the future. It hasn't come. We're just predicting that it will come. Worry is living in the past of fears that you've experienced that created traumas that make you feel worried about what could then happen in the future based on the past. Both fear and worry are not living in present tense. They're not living for the moments that we have, not the ones we had, not the ones we will have, but the ones that are here right now that we're able to dive into, sink our teeth into, enjoy the scents and the smells and the sights and the sounds of now. You listening to this podcast, you're in this moment now as we talk about grieving. And as we're talking about grieving, what does that mean to you? What feeling are you feeling now? Is it a feeling from the past of something you felt when you had to grieve something previous? Is it the thought of what if something happens to someone that I love in the future? Both of these senses can be controlled if you are conscious of your thought processes and what weight you put on your past and your future. If you keep your thought process here in today and in the now, you can only benefit from that information because you are the author, not only of your destiny, but of your today, of your right now. Give yourself grace, but also allow yourself to be sitting in that moment because it is purposeful. I'll tell you a story. When my mom passed away, my mom suffered from ovarian cancer for 5.5 months before she died and in hospice for about a week. And I had the tough decision to make if I wanted my mom to die in my home, surrounded by my children who were young at the time, and have the energy of her spirit depleting her body in front of my, at the time, 7-year-old daughter and my 18-year-old other daughters and my 20-year-old son, and what that trauma potentially could have been to them and how that energetically would work with our family and what that meant for my mom. How would I honor my mom, but also not be scared myself? I was thinking about the future tense of what that grieving process could look like, and I had no direction. I did not know what to do. I didn't want to leave my mom and just be like, somebody else deal with this, but the onus was on me to make a decision, to adult in that situation, and then figure out how we were going to manage our grieving process later. I talked to a friend of mine whose mom also passed of cancer, and she encouraged me with the best possible words. She said, honor your mom in her living, in her death. What would she have wanted in her living, in her death? And in her living, my mom was stubborn. She was going to do things the way she wanted them to be done. She was very holistic. She was very natural. She wanted things to be not sad, but logical and make sense, financially sound, logically make sense. And so all of those thoughts in my head said, bring her home from the hospital, allow her to have her hospice experience surrounded by the people that loved her the most and that she loved the most. It was the best decision I could have made, but I could have not made that decision on my own. I needed people around me who had been through what I was about to go through, who were able to counsel and coach me and support me in ways with empathy that I had not technically managed knowing that I'd been around death before, but nothing so close as my mother. It was a whole different experience I could not have prepared myself for, but to talk and seek the counsel of someone wiser than me. And thank God I did, because there were a lot of people when my mom passed away that wanted to give their advice to me. They were mostly seeking my counsel, in that they wanted to tell me the story of how their mother passed away and what it did to them. And that wasn't what I needed at the time. So I had a very small circle of people that really helped me during my grieving process. And it meant the world to me. So when my mom passed, when she took her last breath and surrounded by the people that loved her the most, we cried and we sang, and we prayed over her body and her soul. And there was an instant peace, not only in that room, but in my home. And we didn't need to wail over her body for days and be angry because she passed too soon. And while those feelings were felt at different times, that moment of grief was beautiful because she wasn't in pain anymore. And it allowed us to feel good about the decisions that led up to that moment where she was surrounded by love. We didn't take pictures. We didn't cheapen the moment. It was something that will be forever remembered in our minds as a family. And we were all there. One of us could have had work, could have been out of town. We were all there. And I could not have asked for a more beautiful experience in death. It doesn't have to be negative. But you have to have good people around you, good counsel around you, so that that process is truly the beginning of the healing that will continue to take place once that person is gone. First birthdays, first anniversaries, first trips without them. My mom passed away the evening of Thanksgiving. No Thanksgiving will ever be the same, but every Thanksgiving will be full of joy and celebration and liberation, because we've made the conscious choice to make it a celebratory moment where we're all together, like we were that day that she passed away. I cook all the foods I cooked that evening because the evening my mom passed away, I cooked everything and it all tasted delicious. And, while there were moments where I would check in on her and cook, the cooking actually gave me purpose. It brought me joy because I love to cook for my family. I love to bring joy through food. So now I cook even bigger meals. I bring even more people around. That first year after, it was small, but we made a family tradition out of when she passed away. We do a gratitude journal and we put something that we're grateful for a month leading up to that Thanksgiving. And then we read those thankful fors the evening of Thanksgiving because we are truly thankful. So your grieving does not have to be a negative process. For all the tears that we cried those days, weeks, and months after, when I tell you now I can talk about my mom's passing with joy and love in my heart, with my spirit connected and healed to the point where when I have a thought now, it's been almost 3 years since her passing, I just say, "Hey, Mommy, how you doing, girl? I miss you. Please give grandmother a hug and a kiss for me. I miss her too. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful you're there to take care of them. And when I'm ready, I want us all to be together one day. But I know I've got work to do right here on earth. So it makes me grateful for the workload that I can do. Because guess what? I'm now the matriarch of my family. I'm now the mom. I will be the grandmother. And I take that responsibility on with joy. Because while my mom went too soon for my liking, she gave me everything that I needed to be a successful adult today, to be a wonderful mother to my children, to be an awesome community leader and business owner. I'm grateful. Another story. A friend of mine, when I posted a post about grief and the diversity involved in grieving and it not having to necessarily be involving death, she inboxed me and then she called me and said, "I'm grieving the loss of my husband. Nobody knows this, but we're about to get divorced. We've been separated for 6 months." And they had small children. And she cried real tears because the death of a marriage, as I went to their wedding, death of a marriage is the same as a loss, like no other. You put your heart and soul into your marriage. When you create children and you create a bond that's supposed to be for life, and for whatever reason, the paths cross, and that lifetime commitment can no longer be. It feels like death. It feels like tomorrow is uncertain. And how will I go on? Well, it requires you to take time with that feeling and allow yourself to process that separation from that person so that you can find a way to cohabitate and co-parent and coexist with love in your heart, knowing that regenerance or that reconfiguring of love will take time, because the love that you had has to move from a fellatio type of romantic love into an agape godly love. But it can happen. Much like grief, it has to take its time to process itself. You can't live in the past. You can't think about the girlfriend he's going to get in the future. You got to be in the present for today, not only for yourself, but for your children. It takes time. It takes a lot of energy. But love and hate, there's a thin line between the two. They're both energy, and they both take time to cultivate and time to die. But you can flip that. You can flip that hatred you may feel in a moment when that person tells you that they no longer love you or they cheated on you and you no longer trust them, in order to figure out a way to adult and find a way to come back to the foundation of the love that allowed you to marry, to be a simplistic love, a godly love, a spiritually led love that doesn't require physical connection, that doesn't require you to trust from a interpersonal space. If you love them enough to create life with them, you have to love them enough to have your children alone. That's a hard pill to swallow for every single parent out there, male or female. Because in a woman's mind, these are my kids. I had them. They're mine. No. You had help. Half their DNA is that man you think you hate now. And you are required to grieve that loss of the relationship and rebuild a new co-parenting relationship that trusts that that person can manage your children without you. That's no longer your ex. That is now the father of your children. And part of grief is renaming things. It's a marketing ploy, but it helps. It helps you to wrap your mind around that loss. Is to not call that person your ex. Call them the father of your children, the mother of your children. So the onus is not on you to relate to them any longer. The onus is on your children because that is their role, to be the father, to be the mother of your children. And that's it. Focus on that relationship and giving your children everything you've got so that they're getting the best version of you. That grief does not have to define the rest of the relationship. It is a moment in time that will bubble up from time to time, but it does not have to be the foundation in which the relationship is continued to be managed upon. When you're grieving death of someone, especially when their body is no longer present here on earth, and it's just a spiritual connection, you can conceptualize in time, they're gone. Well, how do you grieve when someone's still here and they're not dead, but you want them? You want them no longer in your space. It's a level of maturity that none of us have been put here on earth to know how to manage. But it does require you to learn how to love self, to manage your own self-love and self-care and forgiveness of self. When you can forgive yourself, when you can love yourself, you can learn to love your neighbor as yourself. You can learn to love your enemy in spite of what they may have done to you because of what they've done for you. Every situation has a lesson, has a teaching opportunity. It is your job to figure out what that lesson is, even if you're the victim of said situation. I did this wrong. I did that wrong. It's my fault. It's their fault. When you're done with the blame game and grieve that process, you can begin to build a foundation based on self-love and self-care and kindness so that you can build new relationships that when you interact with those people that you've had to grieve around or for, it's rooted in love. It's rooted in kindness. So that way you're not walking around angry at every other situation that then gets compiled on the other things you've got to manage and deal with. And that means you got to give yourself some time. Everything's not going to happen in your time. This is where our patience is built. So give yourself that grace of time. Allow yourself that processing. Stay present in the moment. If today's a great day and it starts off great, today's a great day. Convince yourself of that in your mind. Don't worry about tomorrow's worries. We got tomorrow to think about that. But in this moment, if you can find happiness, glee, joy, goodness in something, even if it's just in, I got some fly earrings on. I'm happy about that. My hands work and I'm able to speak articulately. Oh, I can be grateful in that. And when you can sit in that gratitude, even when difficult moments like grieving come about, and they can just come out of nowhere, I know, you can give yourself that moment to feel those feelings of sadness or depression. But then you can pick yourself up, find the gratitude in those other moments that you've also had that are great. Love is the foundation, and we will get through it all. Thank you so much for listening.